Good morning, everyone. My name is Fera, and I'm one of the teachers at the MY campus. And this morning, I'm going to share my devotion with you. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So just to get to know myself a little bit, I'm married. We got married in December 2014 in a small town back home in Indonesia. And 1 week after we got married, we moved permanently to Australia because while I was in Indonesia, I got a full-time teaching job over in Melbourne. And my husband and I, we have a very handsome dog. His name is Joey, as you can see here. In Indonesia, I come from a city called Yogyakarta, so that's there. Jakarta is there, that's Bali, and Australia is here, okay? In my family, I'm the only child, and I come from a mid-class family. So just like any only child, I'm always daddy's girl. So my dad is my hero. I look up to him a lot. He's the most hardworking person I've ever known in my life, and I aspire to be like him. So in my life as a Christian, I have encountered a lot of miracles, but today I'm just going to share two of them. The first one is when God showed me that he's God as the healer, and the second one, God as the provider. So my dad's Chinese, so he came from a Buddhist background, and my mom was Muslim. She's Indonesian, and our family came to know Christ when Jesus healed me from a brain damage, causing me to be paralyzed in year 5. So he healed me through prayers of my Christian auntie back then, and that's how our family came to know Christ. And second one is God as the provider. So as I mentioned before, I come from a middle-class socioeconomic family. So going overseas to study or even for a holiday was never in my dream, was never in my plan. However, God was so gracious that he provided me with 4 scholarships to do my postgrad study in Japan and in Australia. And the one in Australia was one of the most, the teaching degree, which is why I'm here right now. So in our life as a Christian, God doesn't always lead us to quiet water or still water. And sometimes he leads us to, he led us to walk through the darkest valley, as written here in Psalm 23. And that also happened to me. And I would like to share that darkest valley in my life with you and what I've learned from my experience. So it started in December 2018. My dad went into a coma back home in Indonesia. And so my husband and I, we went home for a Christmas holiday, and we spent our December and January in the ICU because I was the only child and nobody else was. Mom was too tired, so we had to be at the hospital to be with him. And as soon as my dad was allowed to come home, which was like 1.5 months after ICU, we returned to Australia because term 1 was about to start. And a few days after we got back in Australia, my dad went back into the ICU. So I told my husband that I really want to see him again during term 1 holiday. So we bought our our flight ticket to fly home again during term 1 holiday. However, we found out that I got pregnant. So that was my second pregnancy. The first one ended up in a miscarriage. And when we went to see the doctor did not allow me to fly overseas because of the complications that I had. So we had to reschedule the trip to Indonesia during that term 1 holiday into term 2 holiday. Sadly, that second pregnancy ended up in another miscarriage. So in March 2019, I lost my second baby. And a week before we flew home in term 2, we got a phone call very early in the morning saying that my dad passed away already. So that was in June 2019. It was really devastating for me because I didn't get to see my dad before he passed. And I was just so sad. I didn't know why God would let such thing happen to me. Like, he knew the desire of my heart. I really want to see Dad. I really want to be with him during his sickness, but he just didn't let me to. And later that year in 2019, I found out that I was pregnant again. I don't know how that happened, but it did. So with that third pregnancy, we were able to see the heartbeat of our baby. So it was quite exciting. And when we went to see the doctor for the next scan, the heartbeat just stopped. So again, I lost my third baby in October 2019. So 2019 was a really hard year for me and also for my husband because we had 3 losses in a year. And I couldn't help myself but ask God, why is it so hard? Why don't you care about me, God? Like, why did you give us hope that we would have a baby if you're just gonna take that hope away? Why? And so many whys that's in my heart, that's in my mind. And as I read through the Bible, I found out that my response was very similar to the response that the disciples showed to Jesus when they went into the boat and the storm came. Okay, this is taken from Mark 4. So Jesus calms the storm. My response to God at that time was very similar with what the disciples said in verse 38. So Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, why don't you care if we drown?" That's exactly the same thing that I said to God. God, don't you care if I'm sad, if I'm brokenhearted? But then the next verse here, it says that he got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. So this story, and especially verse 38 and 39, to me, it shows how Jesus was fully human. So in verse 38, Jesus was sleeping on a cushion. I mean, who would sleep in the middle of a storm unless they're really exhausted? And this verse showed me that Jesus was fully human because he was tired, he was exhausted, and because Jesus was fully human, he understands my struggle, he understands my heartbreak, he understands my pain and my sadness. But at the same time, in verse 39, he got up and rebuked the wind. I don't think anyone here could rebuke the wind. I don't think any human being could rebuke the wind unless that person has a superpower. And Jesus here in this verse, he showed himself as God, how powerful he is, how he's in control. So from this story, I I saw the two sides of Jesus as a fully human and as fully God. And it tells me that when we are in the middle of the storm, he is fully in control. Okay. So from my life experience that I've shared, I've learned four things. The first one is that when the situation is out of control, God is control. Now, when we look at the word out of control, the opposite of out of control is under control. And who is exactly in control when we say that the situation is under control? We may not realize it, but basically when we say the situation is under control, we say that we can manage the situation, that we can make a plan, that we know what's expected, what's the outcome of our plan. So without realizing it, we would have that in mind that we are in control. And that's when we start to realize that when we say the situation is under control, we start to put ourselves in control as a God that could be in control. And sometimes God puts us or put me in a situation that's out of control to teach me something, to teach me that, I can't always be in control because I'm not God. And let's not rely on my knowledge, not on my experience, not even on my intuition to think that I'm someone who can always be in control. But God is, because he's God. And the second thing that I learned is that God's silence doesn't mean that he's absent. Psalm 121 verse 4 said that indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. So God never sleeps. And sometimes we think that God doesn't care because he doesn't do anything for us. He doesn't do anything according to what we want. In our mind, somehow, we have a concept that if God cares, he must be active. He must be doing something, and we must see the manifestation of his work. Whereas God doesn't always work in a spectacular way. And God doesn't always make big miracles happen every day. But he is always at work, and his wisdom and he himself is always with us. So from my life experience, now that I look back, I know that he never intended to harm my life, but to plan something good for me. So after my dad passed away, my mom came to Melbourne in December 2019. And until now, she's stuck here because of COVID. And I'm just so grateful that I have my mom here in Australia. I just can't imagine how she would be if she were in Indonesia by herself, because I'm the only child and she doesn't have anyone there. But because dad came home, mom could be with us and she could be safer here in Melbourne. And so that's something that I did not think of before when I said to God, why this, why that? The third thing is that for me to be content, I need to be thankful for the things that I have and for the things that I don't have, so that I stop comparing myself with other people. So 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 18 said that we need to be thankful in all circumstances, not only in good circumstances, but in all. So all means good and bad. So this is particularly talking about us not having any children. Yes, we may not be blessed with having a baby, but God has blessed us in so many different ways. And we have to be thankful for that. And the last thing that I learned is that, with all the hardships that I experienced, I have two choices: whether I could live in anger, live in disappointment, and keep demanding God and asking God, why God this happened to me, why, and why. Or I could choose to live in joy by knowing that, the only reason I'm even here right now is because of His grace. I don't deserve anything. So everything I have with me is God's, not mine. And I choose to respond that way because that's what the Bible says. That's the only reason we are here right now is because of His Jesus' grace and mercy. So that's my story. Hopefully you don't get too depressed listening to my to my life experience, and I hope that we are able to learn something from this story. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.